maybe tomorrow you find that life is still worthwhile. If you
What's so funny?
just
Freak?
if you just smile.
The Joker. Was it the best movie I've ever seen? I don't think so, but I think it is one of the most important movies I've ever seen. Because The Joker is not a comedy, not a hero's journey, not an action flick, not a romance, nor horror. It is simply a tragedy. There are many reviews and discussions about this movie, but this one is mine, it's my interpretation, it's my discussion. I want to add many points I haven't seen in anyone's 15-minute breakdown of the movie, and I promise all this connects to my main point at the end, but you have to watch the whole video. Before I can say more, I need to give context of how I feel and view this movie, basically my review of the movie. Where do I even start? To get one thing out of the way, Joaquin Phoenix deserves an Oscar for his performance. He did an amazing job with the movie and there's not much else to say about it. I watched this video recently though. It's Todd Phillips talking about the first 5 minutes or so of the movie, and it's 13 minutes long.
Hi, I'm Todd Phillips, director of Joker, and today we're going to do a couple scene breakdown from the opening of the movie.
He describes the process, the location, the performance by Joaquin Phoenix. This is a line important to me.
I love the way Gotham looks in this movie.
The sirens sound different. They don't sound like New York sirens, and that was another tall order that Todd wanted. We were supposed to make Gotham.
He wanted this to be Gotham, not New York City, not Chicago, none of that Dark Knight Rises where you can see the One World Trade Center in the background, none of that stuff, but he wanted this to be Gotham City. They even changed the sounds of the sirens to custom sounds to make the difference. Piles of garbage and vintage cars of the 80s are all over the streets as well. CGI was rarely used in this movie. It was only really used to create buildings for backgrounds and stuff like that. But a lot of the buildings are real, and they even added stuff like theaters and stuff from this scene, as you can see. Todd was so specific on how the feel was supposed to be that he wanted this small alleyway right here to be enclosed with buildings because he felt the city should be more claustrophobic. That is art. That is the little details that corporate entities wouldn't even think about in a movie. Can we talk about the set design and character design and wardrobe? Every room, every building feels like a real place, and it feels like Gotham City. Every set has stuff everywhere. It feels like these objects just ended up there over time, not placed by a designer. Other movies, especially Marvel movies, have removed so much practical things down to green screening unnecessary things like a still room. Practicality is not good because it is old or classic in quotation marks. It's good because limitation breeds creativity, and that creativity is more concentrated when it's all happening in one place during the filming process. The colors are also amazing, and while the movie is super gritty and dark, it also has many vibrant colors. Simply put, the movie is beautiful and it perfectly captures Gotham City. Now that's just the look of the movie. The writing and story is great as well. The major thing I love about the movie is the beat of it, the events of the movie. There's an event and then rest, event and then rest. Obviously, every movie on the planet has this, but it's more consistent and it basically guarantees enjoyment. It's so refreshing. It just, you know something good is going to happen in the next 5 minutes, every 5 minutes. The events that happen are usually, for the most part, interesting and never boring. Arthur is beaten in the alleyway. Arthur loses his job in the phone booth. Arthur kills the boys in the subway and dances in the bathroom. Arthur's mom goes to the hospital and he later kills her, or so we think. Arthur meets Bruce Wayne and Alfred. He runs from the cops in a crowd of clown processors in the subway. Arthur breaks into the theater and meets Thomas Wayne. Arthur goes on Murray's show and shoots him. Bruce Wayne's parents die. Arthur becomes the Joker. These are just some of the scenes that hit me immediately thinking about this movie, while obviously there are many more, and the pacing for them is amazing. I was never bored throughout the entire movie, and in fact I wish it were longer. Each of these scenes are so comic booky to me, or at least jokery to me, which is my next point.
Early on, and we don't do this a lot in the movie, we wanted the frame to feel out of a graphic novel, and we don't do this framing a ton, but this felt like a frame of any kind of graphic novel you would read, and it's not a normal necessarily movie angle. To me, it feels very graphic novel. That was an important shot for us to get.
This is definitely a comic book movie, although Todd Phillips wanted to adapt many other inspirations besides comics, such as Taxi Driver and King of Comedy, and despite him saying he didn't want to adapt a lot of comics at all, pretty sketchy stuff he said, maybe it was on accident. Some intentional, but this movie is comic booky not because it replicates the exact events of a Joker comic, but because it adapts the character and puts him in different situations. I think this story has a more realistic build-up to Arthur becoming the Joker than The Killing Joke, which remains the most iconic Joker story of all time. While I love The Killing Joke more, but for separate reasons, The Killing Joke was more about Batman and Joker, and I think Joker iconically should always fall in a vat of acid. But The Killing Joke didn't torture Arthur enough. Not saying it didn't at all, but just not enough. This movie throws everything at Arthur from mental disability, abuse, poverty, personal tragedy. Also, The Murray Show is a reference to The Dark Knight. He clearly adapts a lot of elements of The Killing Joke, which puts Arthur wanting to be a comedian and failing, the slow demise of his mental health and loved ones dying, / having tragedies happen to them, such as his girlfriend being entirely in his head and not real. Yes, these are not panel for panel copies of the comic, but I'd rather see them adapted in different ways than what we have seen already. Another part of the comic book side of the movie is some of its comic book-like storylines. It was already a treat for me and other fans to include the Wayne family, which I can talk more about later. But he did more with them than I expected. Arthur at one point is told by his sick mother that he is the son of Thomas Wayne, and this is super comic booky. That is a wacky storyline and a twist on an iconic character that would usually happen in a comic book run to keep readers interested. It reminds me of Bruce Wayne's long-lost turned evil brother in the Court of Owls comic book. That turns out to be false, and that's where the connection ends with the Wayne family, which I like because it's a good amount of connection. Batman and Joker's backstory can't be too intertwined, or it is just personal rather than being about morals and laws of human nature like the stories are usually about in the beginning. Personal bonds have to form. They can't already be formed before anything happens. But I love the fan service of this quick scene. Bruce Wayne's parents die due to a clown protester in the alleyway of Monarch Theater. The reason this scene got me so hyped was that me and Sanity, you may know him, speculated that this exact thing would happen, and it did. Not that the movie was predictable, we took a huge, slim shot in the dark that really probably wouldn't have happened, but it did, and it happened so specifically because we thought a Joker protester might actually do that, or a Joker thug, whatever you want to call him. There is this amazing comic book panel shot of the alleyway that I'm not sure I'm able to get a picture of right now, but it looked amazing. Another thing I want to discuss is Thomas Wayne, who is seen as this high-class asshole, basically. At least that's how Arthur sees it. Usually in comics and movies, Thomas Wayne is seen as a good person, the only rich person around trying to turn the city around, and in a way, that's what this Thomas Wayne says he wants to do. I think in this universe, if there were to be a sequel, Thomas Wayne would be a very complex character. Maybe he has good sides to him, maybe he does want to help the city, but his rich heritage has taught him to think badly of the poor. Maybe Thomas Wayne could have learned to be a better person, but he was killed in an alleyway before this was possible. So therefore, Bruce would have to be the good person for him and become the only rich person who cares about the city by becoming the Batman. But that's just a thought. The last thing I want to talk about is this.
You've talked a lot about being influenced by Taxi Driver and King of Comedy, and one of the things that those movies have in common with the Joker is that there are a lot of aspects where you have to question as an audience, is that real or is that in the head of the character that we're learning about?
What I love about the movie, not to be immodest, but what I do love about the movie is the questions you have at the end, and that I've shown the movie to many different people, friends of mine, when we were editing, and they all had different theories, like you're saying, about what it means, what that means, what the end means.
I like this element to an extent. The narrator is so untrustworthy he doesn't even know if what he is seeing is real. This is something that kind of makes up for the fact that the movie isn't really necessarily a revolutionary plotline. We don't even know if everything in the entire movie is real, because he could just imagine the entire thing, and the only real scene is the last one. You get out of the movie theater questioning a lot, and that's rare in movies these days, especially Marvel movies who tell you how to feel and lay barely or no questions or interpretations at all. Some of the good ones may have one Easter egg at the end or cliffhanger or whatever you gotta think about, but if you're really a comic book fan, then, you would know that immediately, but if you're not a comic book fan, it doesn't really matter. You won't know what that is, and you won't really care what that is. Although I like this element, I wish they added in a bit of good side to contrast with the evil to give a good fighting chance and what the movie means morally. It is still a good movie though. It is not the best movie I've ever seen, but it is above average, way above average for me. And the movie isn't just about writing, it's about the execution of the writing, and it was executed amazingly. The movie in its every detail reminds me a lot of how the Raimi Spider-Man movies were made, where every detail and position of the camera mattered immensely to the director and viewer, down to the color of people's clothes. In the end, I'm not going to give this movie a score or anything, because honestly, I don't think that truly represents what the movie means, and it depends on what you're comparing it to as well. I do think this is a great movie. I think this is a rare movie we don't see that much. It's kind of like the old Spider-Man movies, and those movies were great because of how much detail, all the little things. It was truly art. It truly was art, especially the first two. This movie is art. It is a good story, although not revolutionary, it still is a good story, and the execution of it is very good. Why do I say this movie has saved DC? Technically, literally, it has not saved WB. I don't think they're gonna fall anytime soon. They're massive. What it saved was a type of movie that DC can call their own style instead of copying Marvel, and instead of each movie being CGI filled and splashed with green screen in every shot. DC movies provide variety rather than knowing exactly what each movie will be. I'm not a fanboying DC either. Sony, with Into the Spider-Verse, has shown heart for artistic movies as well, and Fox, too, with Logan and Deadpool. That is until Marvel bought Fox's characters, of course. But these types of movies haven't stuck with them yet. Let me tell you why I think this movie is a work of art and is pushing DC in the right direction, movie-wise. Getting the obvious one out the way, it is an R-rated movie. It's not that it is rated R, it's that it's willing to be rated R for the sake of storytelling. I obviously want kids to see it, especially the Batman movie. I really want kids to see that. It shows that the art is being held at a high priority just as much as the company would hold a bigger viewer audience as a priority. PG-13, basically. For the first time, I can say in a long time that the art of a comic book movie was preserved without the company intervening and destroying, because they think that'll make them a bigger profit. Todd Phillips and Phoenix were uninterrupted in making this movie what they wanted, and W picked the right people to make this movie that would not deviate too far from what makes the characters likable to the fans in the first place, aka Snyder. Snyder did not understand exactly what the fans wanted, and he picked the wrong sources to adapt to a movie universe. Not only were the conditions for making a good comic book movie there, but it was a good comic book movie. No, it was a great comic book movie. I can go on and on about every detail of the movie that I think people don't appreciate enough, although I respect the fair criticisms against the movie.
You really don't want to know. They deserved death. Just like me. Freeze! Don't move, freak! I think he's talking to you.
DC is going in a different path, a better path with their movies. How do I know this? Well, look at the slate. We have Birds of Prey coming. You can see it's a lower budget, more artistic movie with actual style, and I'm sure WB isn't interrupting its making. We have Matt Reeves making the Batman. Matt Reeves is famous for making the very artistic last two movies of the Planet of the Apes reboot, and if you follow the news about the movie, he is very concerned with the script and the quality of this movie, and its connection to the comics. He is taking inspiration from comics like The Dark Victory. That's crazy, no one even knows about The Dark Victory, but it is a very Batman comic. I think WB, knowing how big Batman is, will have some requirements, but they know tampering too much can ruin a movie, basically Justice League. So I'm hoping they let Matt Reeves do his thing. Wonder Woman 84 is also coming, and the art for it is awesome. Nothing, not even the teaser, has got me thinking that this will be a corporate-controlled film. Patty Jenkins, a very good director who did one of the only good old DC movies, Wonder Woman, is directing this one. The next Suicide Squad movie being directed by James Gunn, the creator of Guardians of the Galaxy movies, which are held as some of the better Marvel movies. And the art direction of Guardians of the Galaxy is great as well. Clearly, DC has variety and more artistic looks at its characters coming up, and I am excited for it. I hope WB keeps on this path and stays on it, because they seem to reboot and rebrand what they are doing way too much, but I think they understand. Marvel is extremely corporate and shows us their movie slate for like the next 5 years. It's insane. But DC, it looks like they're taking their time. They have learned at least a few things from the Snyder movies and Justice League and Suicide Squad. At least I hope they have. The last topic I wanted to talk about is the media's view of this movie. This will cover sensitive material, just to warn anyone. This isn't just to trash the media for its terrible coverage, but ironically, this has given more discussion about the movie itself and what it means for this video. I went to the theater and I saw all types of ages, all types of people, but the internet and media create this black and white idea that only certain bad people are willing to see this movie. According to the media, the Joker has a terrible negative effect on the world. The media believes that the Joker movie will cause real life violence. I am here to argue with the opposite, and also, no shootings have happened, no violence has occurred from this movie. Here are my points to defend the Joker movie. First of all, the only people who will be inspired to cause violence in the real world from this movie is the people who are already prone to that behavior or have been thinking of these things way before. A single movie is not going to change a normal person to a killer. It just doesn't make sense. To incite that the Joker is a movie that would spark any sort of violence in real life means you believe all violent media can do that. Should we ban all violent media? Should we ban video games as well? We just got over that argument and it's back to movies again. If we were to move on a path of banning entertainment based off of this, first of all, there would be extreme cases, probably Supreme Court cases, but if it were to be true, in general, we would no longer be able to have relatable villains and or trouble heroes who turn into bad people, or the other way around, bad people turn into good people. Because the main argument against this is that you shouldn't sympathize with a killer or any type of bad person, which I will get to in a bit. These types of movies are called tragedies. They have existed since the days of Homer and Greek mythology. I can't express how terrible this would be for storytelling if it weren't existing. This is one of the most important types of stories in my opinion, and is the most meaningful. If every hero or main character was just a good person and the bad guy is just the bad guy, no twist on the characterization, no similarities between the two, everyone viewing would see the world in black and white, which is a terrible mentality. I want to talk about sympathizing.
And they said, how could you sympathize with that guy? He's a monster. And I go, well, you can still sympathize with him. Is it possible to feel bad for a monster without being a monster yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, and I think ultimately the movie's somewhat about that, and it's about empathy in general, and having empathy for maybe those that are less fortunate or those that are left-footed with the world like Arthur is.
I think you can sympathize with the Joker who is going through what many adults go through, and you couldn't blame him for having mental problems. He was born with them, he was abused with them. Arkham Asylum isn't helping him, no one is really, and the people who have tried end up getting taken away from him. I want to bring up this clip from a podcast that made me stop watching Kevin Smith.
Greatest comic book cinematic achievement we've ever seen, but it also could be incredibly misguided for the time that we're living in.
Really?
It could be. Like, apparently, from what I can tell, this Joker's a guy who's got some mental health issues, who gets beat up a bunch of times, and then decides to kill people.
Sounds like a Taxi Driver.
Right. Which, again, if you watch today, it's like, oh, lots of people get beat up all the time. Like, I got beat up riding the subway in New York. I did not turn into a raving maniac. And that's what it takes. That's all it takes to make the Joker the Joker. And there's this idea that because society has not valued you, we are going to celebrate your lack of value by somehow championing the fact that you're a maniac.
Mark is absolutely wrong in every way about this. First of all, he hasn't even seen the movie yet and he's judging it, but he doesn't just get beaten up in a subway. That is not all it takes. He is mentally abused. He has conditions, mental issues. His father has abandoned him. Everyone really has abandoned him. His mother is crazy just like him. He cannot escape this. He loses his job all the time. Everything is being taken away from him. This is not just a normal city. This is not something that everyday people go through. This is worse than that. This is torture. It's a tragedy. And all you have to say is that that's all it takes. Are you crazy? Second of all, the movie is not trying to make you value people by celebrating their bad behavior. The point is to realize why people like this turn into bad people. And some of the problems are, yes, society itself and low-condition institutions like Arkham Asylum. Mark is missing so many pieces of the puzzle, and it's downright unresearched on the trailer he claimed to see. My next point is, why should we surrender our entertainment to bad people? Why should we ban stuff from ourselves because a few already troubled individuals turn the movie into a real-world negative thing? If that does even happen. Many violent movies have come out and caused no shootings. You're letting very small minority of people who need help control your life. Another point I want to make is about the nature of these arguments. I don't want this to get too political, but I feel like this isn't political, it's just obvious. All of our solutions surrounding this topic, such as violent video games, movies, all revolve around post-reactionary solutions, meaning we defend ourselves from things we could have stopped existing in the first place. Everyone needs to stop looking at the world as black and white. People turn into bad people. You don't come out of the womb a killer. It's funny because I'm pretty sure that's the message of this movie. A human being can turn into a bad person. Obviously, this isn't even political. Nothing like this is in real life. The media is trying to make you believe that this is happening. There's some kind of huge, giant thing about this movie, and everybody's mad about it, but it's just them. I'm sure the writers don't even believe the crazy stuff they're doing. It's all for clicks. There's no controversy about this movie. It's only the media trying to make it look like that. They want you to believe something huge is happening. They want you to believe a shooting is going to happen so that you talk about it and therefore you look at their articles. No one actually cares. No one gives a shit about what they're saying. It's only the minority of people who look at their articles on the internet. This is my final point in the context of others. It's the most important point. No one from what I've seen is saying this. I think the main point of DC Comics, and most notably Batman Comics, is to actually teach the viewer that this ideology of black and white that is being used to attack this movie is not true. It's not real. Good people can turn into bad people and the other way around. Batman's no killing rule is based off of this, and it's so utterly ironic that a Batman and DC related movie is being attacked by an ideology that they have written against for many decades. That right there, every arrow pointing, even down to the media coverage, this is a tragedy. I know, obviously, right? I mean, that is the point of the movie, but do we realize how important tragedies are? We go into movies simply for entertainment a lot of the time, telling us how to feel, telling us false stereotypes, sucking in nothing but plot you will forget about 2 days later, something that doesn't impact you much. This isn't just movies, but video games, comics, books, art, everything. While they should not overcrowd the market, these stories challenge personal beliefs and or change them, and that's okay, because if your beliefs are strong enough to withstand the story, then they are good beliefs, and if they aren't, then you just need to reevaluate them. And that is okay. Not being perfect, not being perfectly good is okay. You just have to get up and try the best to be a good person. Stories like Two-Face, Mr. Freeze, Red Hood, and the Joker, etc., are examples of people who have failed to do that. It gives the viewer an understanding of how people came to be the way they are, and perspective is one of the most important things you need in life. Batman comics are tragedies, not because Batman fails all the time or dies at the end, but because at least one character in every story has a detailed downfall, and Batman learns from it just like us. The greatest Batman comics are detailed psychological character studies that really make you think, even about yourself. The Dark Knight is a popular film, maybe you've heard of it. I hope you know that this character is not the hero of the story, nor is this one. Actually, both of them are the antagonist of the story. The hero of The Dark Knight is actually Harvey Dent, and in the end, the evil and influence of Gotham overtook his hope, his aspirations to truly help the people of the city. Batman wanted Harvey to replace him as the hero of Gotham, not as the Batman but as Harvey Dent, without a mask, and with his only shield being the beacon of hope that he is. The Killing Joke is a tragedy of Batman and Joker's relationship. Despite the thousands that Joker has murdered in insanity, Batman cannot bring himself to kill him, and that has spiraled them down into a dark hole until the end of the book, where we still don't know what happens.
Excuse me.
What really happened in the Joker movie? And what does it mean to you? I think the most important thing you can take away from this video is that tragedies will teach you the most about you. And that is why The Joker is such a great movie.